India is locked and loaded for the big G20 Summit that kicks off this weekend. I'm Shiv Arur. I'm here with India Today's amazing panel of journalists and experts who are going to be fronting 100 hours of non-stop coverage of the G20 Summit. We call it Namaste G20. Each one of us is going to be covering it non-stop for 100 hours, so you miss absolutely nothing in what is, by all means, by all accounts, one of the most important events ever to be hosted here in India. I'm joined now by News Director Rahul Kanwal, who's going to be fronting our coverage, who's going to be taking us through all of the big events that happen, the big world leaders, all of the big interviews. You've been seeing his coverage. Siddharth Zarabi heads Business Today Television. Remember that it was Business Today that got the first interview by the Indian Prime Minister in the run-up to G20. That's something that we're very, very proud of. Gaurav Sawant is going to be our man on the ground. I don't know if it's going to be for 100 hours, but pretty much all the time he's going to be right there. India Today, remember, the only channel with exclusive on-site access, and we'll be going live from there. Akshita has been doing the rounds of a very new Delhi that gets set to receive everyone as they begin to arrive starting Thursday morning, and she will tell us about the security. Polomi's been plugged into all of the politics surrounding the G20, and she'll be bringing us that. Thanks very much for watching. 100 hours of non-stop coverage begins. Rahul, starting it off with you, what's this week been like? We're completely ready with our coverage. You're going to be on it from the morning as well. You've been speaking to some of the biggest minds. How big is this, Rahul?
You know, we've been involved with bringing together the India Today conclave for so many years, Shiv. And the week before the conclave is always a week riddled with uncertainty about some headline speakers who may or may not come. I think the Indian government has had a conclave-wali feeling this week because with Xi Jinping pulling out, with Vladimir Putin pulling out before that, the Mexican president not coming, what was pitched initially as the grandest show of strength ever is still a very grand show of strength, but just one notch lower than the host would have wanted. It doesn't take anything away from all those who are coming, who are still coming at the highest levels of their governments, but it does take away that little bit extra. Having Xi and Biden do bilateral in Delhi would have been spectacular had it happened. That's not going to happen. The other big concern at this moment, building into the summit, is about whether there will be a tangible outcome. Because all leader summits, all such multilaterals are judged by what came off it.
Takeaways,
So outside of the photo opportunity, it'll be interesting to see what are the tangible deliverables. And I think Dr. Jaishankar, in that interview he did this morning, makes that clear. Don't assume that things aren't happening. The negotiators are still at it. It's now a race to the finish. Let's see what comes of it.
And all of those takeaways, the outcomes will, I guarantee you, be broken on India Today first. That's our guarantee here on our coverage. Siddharth, the Prime Minister choosing to give his first pre-G20 interview to Business Today is not something I'm going to underplay. It's a big article of pride that he chose to speak first to our group, first to Business Today. Many of the things he said really setting the agenda for the large-scale things that are going to be hoped to be achieved during the discussions in this summit. Just take us through some of those things and what you're looking forward to.
Well, you know, if I were to try and summarize the Prime Minister's extensive interview in one headline, I would say India's moment is upon us as far as the G20 is concerned. And that moment the Prime Minister is trying to push for is to tell the world that there is life beyond the United States and China in terms of a new economic fulcrum. And India is positing itself in the center of what is now being referred since many years as the global south. Now, this sounds like big words, but essentially the growing part of the world with a massive amount of consumption, not for now, for the next 30 years is going to be in this part of the world, Shiv. And that's where the Prime Minister is putting India right in the center of it all.
Now, the global gaze is going to be on India. There's no doubt about it. All the big world leaders that matter are going to be here. Like Rahul said, Putin, Xi Jinping and the Mexican head of state are not going to be coming, but that doesn't mean it isn't going to be big. Gaurav, you and I have been looking very closely. You're going to be on the ground. You're going to be, just a few feet away from all of these leaders and bringing us those live reports from tomorrow onwards when they start arriving. But Xi Jinping has been a big headline here in India because there was a great deal of suspense. You've been reporting that very closely. But as we've seen and as we're going to be reporting over the next couple of days, his absence at the G20 is not necessarily bad news. There is a context to why he's not coming, and that may be a big talking point at the G20.
In fact, because he may be the talking point at the G20, could well be the reason that he's choosing to stay away. In diplomacy, there's an old saying, if you're not on the table, you're on the menu. And that's exactly what China is. Now, you have the entire free world that's talking about rules-based order. And what's Xi Jinping doing? Xi Jinping or China, they are actually trying to break the rule-based order, and they're being expansionist. The world will not take that, and not anymore. So there is a pushback against China and India. So there is this big conversation. China on the decline, India on the rise. So Shiv, this is India's moment. The next 100 hours will show how prepared is India to play that big role on the world stage. Well, China will try to play a spoiler. China would not want India to win. And despite China, we will win, or we hope to win, or we'll try to win. That's the spirit of G20, taking the developing countries along. You don't want America to talk down to anyone, or you don't want China talking down to anyone. You want everyone on that table as equals. So that's India's effort.
I suspect that our 100 hours of coverage of the G20, a large part of it is going to be talking about the leader who is not there. But that's going to be very significant because we're going to give you context for why Xi Jinping not being there is not necessarily, as some sections are projecting, bad news for India. Akshita, speaking about preparations, Gaurav spoke about it. You've been out and about in Nai Delhi. We've heard lots of complaints about roads being blocked, etc. But for an event of this scale, preparations are going to be necessary. What did you see out there? Because the pictures you've been sending us, and which Gaurav is going to be seeing firsthand, are absolutely fabulous. The preparations are amazing.
Delhi, it's world-class, essentially, Shiv. Perfect place to really host the G20, looking at how it does right now. It's stunning, yes, and it's been a mammoth exercise that I think has lasted for the last many, many months. That's led to now and culminated in this beautiful Pragati Maidan that you see right now in Delhi. Yes, it's hard. I remember last evening, when I was, going around Pragati Maidan, the moment my car would stop, you would have at least 10 policemen rushing towards you, whistling away, saying, you're not allowed to stop here, keep going, because there's a lot of VVIP movement in the area. Late last night when I went, I saw a lot of people stopping and taking selfies. I was saying it's become the new India Gate because so many people were stopping, taking pictures. The Bharat Mandapam looks absolutely stunning. And I think I've been saying this to everyone. I said it to all of you. Please go there. Ensure you catch a glimpse of it. The lighting, the Natraja, all of it is just stunning. And I can't wait to see how it looked on the G20 day, because I think the day I visited, we still had about 3 days to go, and it was already so beautiful. So a lot of preparations done. I know some have said, why did we need to do this for a G20? Why don't we do it even before for Delhi? But let's hope that now that we've gotten it, it stays that way.